Hello, everybody. How are you doing tonight? This is February 13th for another hour or so. But even then, I'm not going to be live on Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Um, if you have a partner, or if you're lucky enough to have multiple partners, smooch them for me. If you don't, I will smooch you. Mwah. There you go. Okay. Sorry for the later stream today. This week, the schedule was just going to be a little bit weird. So, I'm not going to chat very long. I'm going to get right into the game here because we're going to do our best to push through to the end of the game, which is going to be rough because there's like 4 or 5 boss fights, depending on how you define them, that I have to get through before I can actually finish the game. So I'm not sure how long this stream is going to be, because once Blasphemous is done, I'm going to wrap it up, raid somebody, and I'm going to probably head to bed. So depending on how long the bosses take me, it could be a very long stream, or it could be a very short stream if I end up, being an absolutely hog gamer. But that's not very likely. So I'm just gonna get right into it, and I will talk to you all and play. So the first thing that we're gonna do is I need to check my prayers. Okay, that's not the one I'm looking for. So there is a prayer that I don't have that I want to go get. As far as I know, I've done everything required to get it. I just need to go pick it up, because it's going to really help us in this series of boss fights, because it straight up makes you invincible for a little bit. Let me run and grab that. We'll get to bash our heads against Chrysanta for a little while. Still have that garlic, don't I? Yeah. Do you want this?
Sorrowful.
No, you do not. Okay. Token of appreciation. Just an ordinary marble presented as thanks for the charity received. Somehow the scratched glass resonates with the empty bioflask, increasing your strength when their liquid has run out. Okay.
Penitent one in charity, this is my new home, and from here shall my vigil begin anew. Take these words I managed to transcribe from the voice of Our Lady amid suffering, so they can become a prayer which you can raise in her memory.
Tiento to your
The
thorned
order
hairs.
blesses you, penitent one in the righteous path.
Okay, so let's check out this one. Summons the help of the Thorn Dame, who protects the penitent one from all evil for a short while. Your name is Tentugia, she who left to join the nuns. Not grieve or endure affliction, for with your unjust damnation, the miracles you gave us. If your hair has turned to bramble, that on your pale neck draws blood, do not grieve or endure affliction, for we present you with this song that might tear away each thorn. So that works? Oh, hey, you got, Cake. Cake is his name, right? Cakes emojis. Yeah, cool. And I forgot to read the, I didn't read the lore for the Token of Appreciation. Finally, the church is going to open after so long. Soon, the constant silence of this place will end. A new light will enter through the gate, and dust will rise from the worn tiles and damp wood of the pews. Everything must be perfect, everything in place and ready. I am the child of the Mass. This is my calling. Someone get you a sub? Nice. Okay, so... what's this one do? Accelerating the use of prayers. Accelerating bioflasks. I'm going to take that one off and put that one on, because I intend to be abusing Tiento to your thorned hairs. And why not? Let's donate a shitload of tears. I have no use for them at this point. Oh, I've got 146,000. Okay. Damn, I guess I was farming Chrysanta for a while. Let's just give them all of this. Time for me to unlock the secret capitalist ending. Anyway, how are you doing tonight, Azari? Lovely to see you here, as always. $100,000 is the max I can give. Yo! New skin. And do I get anything else for donating 100,000? Oh, but it looks nice. We have people taking refuge here now. Cloistered ruby. A crystal sphere imprisoning a ruby heart. The gem sparkles with lightning from other lands, filling the glass with a stormy light. The strange entity fills its wearer with determination, electrifying the very air around him after drinking from a bioflask. Ah, well, hello, Undertale reference. Yeah. Honestly, it has felt like a long week. And you're right, it's only Monday. Oh, I do have some good news. My capture card came in today. I haven't tried it yet, but I've got it unpacked, and everything seems to have got here in good order. So, heck, maybe Switch streams sometime soon. And now I can cleanse my guilt here for free. Neat. Okay, cool. I have made this the richest church in all the land. I don't know what I'm actually going to stream on the capture card, because, like... I don't know. I actually haven't played my Switch in a long time. Maybe I'll do Axiom Verge 2? Because... Quack! Hello, Vault. Because I streamed Axiom Verge 1, the PC version, a while ago. But I've only ever played a little bit of Axiom Verge 2. So, whoop. Maybe I'll play through that. That could be fun. Oh! What the heck? Okay, I've upgraded all the shrines. Now they've got the fucking Pillar Men. And they refill my fervor? Oh, okay. I like this. This is good. Hello, Theo. Welcome. Welcome to, hopefully, the last episode of Blasphemous, if I am good at video games. And this entire stream, you're live and I'm not asleep yet. Woo! Yeah! I haven't seen you here in a while, but I know, like, your work schedule and my stream schedule don't often line up. So yeah, welcome. We are going to... have you ever seen Blasphemous, Theo? Because it seems like a game you might enjoy. Okay, that's my parry. Because it's Sorrows of an 8-to-5 job. Yeah. Big mood. So yeah, if you're not familiar with Blasphemous, it is... I've seen it here, actually, but only a couple times. Well, we are at the end, so this is going to be spoiler territory if I actually do good. but it's gonna be wild, assuming I actually manage to beat these bosses.
Penitent one in sleeplessness, carrying the guilty sword, you have committed the most serious crimes against the Mother and her saints.
Yeah, big
against
if.
the miracle and its outbreaks. We have been entrusted with putting an end to your mission. I, Chrysanta in penance, excommunicate you, expel you, execrate you, with the blessing of our miracle of the greatest pain. And thus shall your name be erased under the heavens.
But why, though? Alright. Not off to a great start. Ouch. Ah, shit. Okay, phase 1.
That sword you wield, the High will sing that I must escape the kiss of its steel, as it is wholly tainted by the heresy of its bearer. The Great Ones, from the eternal processions, demand that I should battle until I draw my dying breath. The Three. The High Voices proclaim that your execution cannot be delayed. And so I fear that my penance is far from over. Not while their voices still echo. Not while your silence endures.
Ouch. you. Got him! Fuck yeah!
Go on! Purge my soul bitten by the miracle!
How about no? Now we're both heretics.
This pain that I feel.
Tell you what, I really wish I had a fucking heart rate monitor for this stream, because my heart is pounding after that. I spent probably 45 minutes fighting this bitch last stream and didn't beat her.
It is deeper, more ancient. The guilt you carry has broken something inside of me. My faith, my soul is wounded. I will now walk to the chapel where it all began, where the first kneeling took place. Your first step towards atonement. Now leave me alone with my deep wound.
I could leave you alone, but I think I actually want to go visit you. And yes, I kept the girl alive. She's here at the very end of the game. We're not going to use her. We're going to keep her alive the entire game. But I think I'm going to wait before walking in here. Because I don't know if I need to go talk to her at that chapel or not. So we're going to make a little trip out there. Yes, if you're not doing the canon ending, you kill her, then you walk up the stairs and kill the Pope, and then you either become the new head of this religion, or if you haven't got the stuff for the good ending, you die and the cycle begins anew. But we're going for the canon ending, which means we have a little bit of extra content to see. Starting with, we might be able to go back and have a conversation with her. Hi, Plum Phone. You get to punch a Pope? Yes. We get to punch a Pope several times. But first, I want to see if she's back here and if I need to talk to her. Oh, I went the wrong way. Oh, we're not just going to attack and dethrone God's messenger on this sinful earth. If I do everything right, the title of this stream is going to be a thing. If I have done everything correctly, and I think I have, we are going to kill God. This ending was added with DLC. So, I guess it wasn't really DLC because it was free. But Wounds of Eventide, the last update for it, added this ending. If you buy the game now, it's going to be included with it. But, yeah. Okay, so there's Esper. Ah, she is here. What, do you have anything to say?
Something has changed in her.
Yeah, I kind of, you know, I tipped my fedora at her, and now she's an atheist.
Something unfathomable that escapes my judgment.
Once again, my mask of blindness meets your silent one.
It's actually pretty cool that she mentions that, because she was very much blinded by faith, and if you see her mask on the title screen, it's got hands reaching up from underneath to cover the eyes. So, symbolism and whatnot.
Do not worry on my account. The Crimson Cords protect me from being wounded. It is true, and so. Your sword and you, guilt and penance in Holy Communion, only you both can put an end to this eternal cycle, to this eternal twilight with neither beginning nor end. Penitent one, there is something greater than the Mother Church, greater than the miracle, greater than what I have protected with my life and my faith.
I don't know if she's actually blind, but the helmet definitely makes it look like it. But you could probably see between the fingers. Yes, you were able to physically attack the metaphysical manifestation of her faith, because I found the fourth Golden Visage, who was branded a traitor for wanting to tell people the truth about their religion, and he gave me the true heart of Mea Culpa, which allowed me to directly attack her soul. Or something like that.
It is that which controls the miracle. I am speaking of the Supreme Trinity, the High Wills. They can be found on the other side of the dream, on the path of the eternal processions. But only a soul in supreme suffering can obtain supreme absolution, and thus be able to reach such a place.
Yes, we absolutely revealed the lies of this faith. Holy Wound of Abnegation.
Now you are marked by the four wounds. The final ascension awaits beyond the throne, beyond the dream. Perform your final penance and make your way to the turned throne. The eternal processions await us on the other side.
All right. Well, you heard the lady. Time to go beat up the Pope. I really like how Azari pointed out that my sword is named Mea Culpa, which basically means my sword is just called, hey, my bad. Okay, time to go pay a visit to the Pope. I tell you what, it really was worth it dumping all those souls into the church in Albero, because now resting at those shrines refills my fervor, and I have a prayer that makes me invincible for like 10 seconds. Enough time to heal, or enough time to dump a full combo into somebody? Perfect. Alright. You can stay there. We're not gonna need your assistance. I want you to live through this if at all possible.
In my dreams, I heard your footsteps coming closer. In my dreams, I tried to talk to you and introduce myself. Guardian of the miracle and of the miracle banner, with great pain, I carry the emblem of the Father. I am the hands of bloodied skin. I am the eyes from which our mother gazes. But nothing I know of you, apart from your cold, nameless visage, apart from your calloused and wounded hands, apart from the mourning of your deaths. No, I know nothing of you. Only the miracle knows. Now may your sword full of guilt with mine of gold collide. Let them hurt and march in procession. I curse you forever in name. I bless you forever in death.
Actually, a pretty good villain monologue. I am doing hella damage to this guy. Okay, that's phase one.
You have shattered the mirror in which you saw me asleep. Now you see me awoken as the son of the true miracle.
So this is gonna suck, but I'm going into it with full bioflasks at least. Ouch. Back here, sword. Damn it. All right. Phase 2. Summa blasphemia. We have killed the Pope. Can I go back and rest? I would love to be able to go back and rest. Please let me go back and... I can't go back and rest. Right. So be it. On to phase 3. This is going to be a really short stream, guys. This is going to be a super fucking short stream. Yes, the sum of all my blasphemies. We have killed a bunch of holy people on the way here.
You have freed his holiness from his afflicted torment. And now he walks by the old processions on the other side of the dream. The cradle of the grievous miracle, the final relic. The grail of blood and gold that emanated from the forehead of the Father as he silently lamented the moment of his blessed twisting. That first relic is here, at the top of the Ashen Mountain, next to the Turned Throne, where His Holiness was kissed by a miraculous pain. And now, your final communion with the miracle awaits. Only you will be able to know how much of it has seeped into your guilty heart.
All right. Let's go. Let's go fight God. Welcome to the Eternal Procession.
Here we are, my crimson figure and you, on this side of the dream. The miracle has turned me into a sentinel of its sacred home. This is my new calling. What do you hope to find here that is not the blinding gray light that tempers our wounds, and the vast horizons that extend without end? The path of paths has ended, and with it, so too has your penance.
More than likely, if I don't
Let your
heal.
body, like mine, be bathed in blood. This will be your final resting place, but no one will be able to watch over you. There is no point in recoiling from the desires of the all-knowing and all-powerful miracle.
Oh shit, I can't use my prayers here. Also, he does a lot of damage. But the patterns don't seem too difficult. Oh!
There
Oh!
is no point in recoiling from the desires of the all-knowing and all-powerful miracle.
Okay, cool. So I just get brought back. Thank you, Chrysanta of the Wrapped Agony. That makes this much less painful.
Behind me, Penitent. Take cover in my crimson bindings.
My final task is completed. I will go, and so too will all those who loved me. Now I will sink down here, in this land of clouds, in this realm of dust and glimmering lights.
Get fucked. But wait, there's more.
The Guardian has fallen. The final truth awaits you. The final outrage. Go forward now, through the embroidered mantles towards the light.
Let's go fist fight God. I'm just warning you right now, if you've seen the rest of this game, you probably know God is pretty fucking ugly.
Penitent one, who comes into our presence.
Bringing guilt to the most sacred of places, to the most forbidden of temples.
Breaking all laws, and thus desecrating His Holiness himself.
We are the High Wills. For there is no miracle that does not stem from our desire.
That is not our reflection.
That is not our word.
The Word that was first made flesh, and then sanctified. Penitent one, does not the pale, still light of this vast horizon hurt your eyes?
Of this procession, more ancient than us, that extends out before you without end, nor beginning.
Of this brotherhood of grieving souls, held captive by their own condemnation and benediction?
This is the path of the ancient processions, the kingdom that the miracle wove from threads of dreams. A domain where faith would unite in one single, uninterrupted act of adoration.
That would give us light and time.
That would make us eternal.
And higher reaching than the sky itself. You have come to this place to atone for your sins, to put an end to this work.
Destroying our flesh that once was word, and now is but silence.
Making us cast down our eyes, leaving the miracle bereft.
And so the last of our wills is your eternal condemnation. In life and in death, in hunger and in thirst, in sleep and in wakefulness.
Buried under layers of ash, the ash of your flesh, bones and sinew.
Execrated in visage, forgotten in name, forever and ever.
There is no penance that can exonerate this sin. It is the price to pay for the ultimate blasphemy.
Okay. So that probably requires some explanation, and I'm going to tell you what I got from it. So, thus the Peg Hatters buried their greatest pegger. We never did get the Conehead attack, unfortunately. Still waiting on that DLC. So, what the fuck just happened there? Let's walk through it. So, we're going to step back a little bit. We talked with 3 holy visages who wanted us to go in and kill the Pope and take his place and become the new head of the religion. And we did that for a while until we encountered Esbern. Now, Esbern wanted to fight us, but we had previously spoke to the spirit of his sister who said, maybe just don't. And then he wandered off to a church. We went to go find him. He gave us a key made from gnarled wood, which we took to the Mother of Mothers, the big cathedral. And using that key, we got into a chamber with the 4th holy visage, who was in the roots of a tree called the Knot of the Three Words, and we'll get to why it's called that in a minute. Paraphrasing that 4th visage, he said, hey, God is really kind of an asshole. Maybe you should make him not. And we got his eyes back, and in exchange for that, he gave us the true heart of our sword. I believe it was the Heart of Abnegation. I could be wrong there, but it's the true form of our sword. Put it on, and then they said, hey, go find the most faithful person in the land and, destroy her faith. Destroy the faith that chains her to this religion, which happened to be Chrysanta. So we found her, we beat her up, we broke the chains of her faith and made her see the truth, that this god is kind of a dick. So then we went up to fight His Holiness Escribar. We fought him, and then we fought his true form, and he turned into the red 5-armed man and disappeared off to the other side of the dream. And then we went into his throne room, where his throne, which he turned away from his congregation, sits atop a mountain of ashes. And there's some lore reason for there being a mountain of ashes there. You have to read into it a little bit. It's all backstory. We climbed the mountain of ashes, didn't sink into it, made it to the throne, and then the throne took us to the dream, where we fought Escribar again, this time as basically an archangel of the High Wills. Defeated him in the dream, basically destroying his soul, so he is gone, and went on to see the High Wills themselves, who gave us a really long speech that basically amounted to, hey, you know what you're doing? Well, yeah, there's no penance for this kind of sin. You're just damned for all of eternity. And Chrysanta and I didn't like that, and we killed them. We killed God, or I guess it could be 3 gods. It could be like a triumvirate. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're 1 entity or 3. But we killed them. They are dead. The High Wills are no more. And then some stuff happened. First of all, we saw a person who was kind of crucified and turning into a tree. That is the origin of the sacred tree, the Knot of the Three Words. The first manifestation of the miracle was a boy who begged for punishment for his sins, and as punishment was turned into a tree that constantly wept burning golden sap. And the reason it's called the Knot of the Three Words is because the only 3 words that boy ever uttered after his transformation was, "My great guilt." Yeah, honestly, I was kind of expecting to fight the High Wills. But I mean, we did just finish a marathon of 5 boss battles. The 3 wills are 1 and 3. This is true. It could be like the Christian mythology, where God is a singular entity, but he's also the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Which honestly, considering the voices of the High Wills being an old man, a young man, and a woman, kind of makes sense. You know, you've got the old man, the Father, the young man, the Son, and the Holy Spirit could be the woman. Okay. So, the Nod of the Three Worlds, or the Nod of the Three Words, the boy that turned into the tree, he reaches out and touches us on the shoulder, basically says, "You did good, son," and then he fades away. And then we look down at our sword, and our sword crumbles to dust, and that's because the sword, the blade, was created by the miracle. The handle was a religious icon. It was a statue of the Pope. So that's real, but the blade fades away. And then the penitent one dies, because at this point I have died hundreds of times over, and the only reason I was still walking around was because the miracle said, hey, maybe don't. So I died. And then Chrysanta and Dea Gracias lay me to rest, put me in my tomb. My penance is over, my story is over, and the game is over. That's it. But there is one more cutscene. And yeah, so after all of that happens, and the will of the miracle is expunged from Custodia, the skies part, and a giant, anatomically correct heart containing a giant man curled in the fetal position descends from the sky. And that is the end of the game. So I feel like we probably ought to talk about that. So the High Wills said some things when we were talking with them. They said the path of the ancient processions is more ancient even than them. So the dream where we were, the processions, all of that, that predates the god of our religion. They also said that, and they did it in a very roundabout way, that basically their flesh began as words. So I'm thinking that maybe the High Wills were created by this religion and not the other way around. And when we kill the High Wills, sometime later, an indeterminate amount of time later, the Heart Man descends from the sky, and things get a little bit eldritch. Were they not created by the three words? Honestly, they could have been. It could have been the three words that created the High Wills. Tulpa level belief? It depends. I mean, like, it's in D&D, right? Depending on what setting you're in Dungeons and Dragons, belief sustains the gods, and in some cases can create gods. I know in particular, in the Planescape setting, which it's an interesting setting, but it mostly amounts to philosophy majors wanking their different philosophies for however long the campaign lasts. But there's a video game, Planescape Torment, where you play a character called the Nameless One. And throughout the story, you do everything, and there's several times when someone asks your name. And you can do a lot of different things with this. You can tell them you don't have a name, you can remain silent, or you can tell them randomly that your name is Ashan. And if you tell enough people that your name is Ashan, you will create an NPC named Ashan that you can meet later in the game. So belief creates things. So theoretically, the belief in the High Wills created a physical manifestation of the High Wills. And maybe the Grievous Miracle and all the mutations and weird shit that we've been seeing throughout the game wasn't created by the High Wills. We're not sure. But whatever descended from the sky in the ending there, the High Wills ostensibly were holding it back. Or maybe people's faith in the High Wills was holding it back. We don't know. We don't know yet. We don't even know if the Heartman is a good thing or a bad thing or what. I mean, considering the game, it's probably bad, but it's completely unclear. It's just a little stinger for Blasphemous 2, which is confirmed to be in the works. Or it was whoever is taking over next. Azari raises a good point. You know, in one of the endings, we become the new figurehead of the religion. Maybe we become God. So my predictions for Blasphemous 2, personally, I think the Heartman, I'm just going to keep calling him the Heartman until we get some kind of a name for him. I think he's a villain. I think he's eldritch and just bad juju, and bad shit's going to happen. And I'm predicting that we are going to be playing as Chrysanta, because she's another master-level swordsman. She's another person who is incredibly high-ranking in the faith, you know, of the High Wills, and she's still alive at the end of the game. And considering this is the canon ending, her faith in the High Wills has been shattered, but she's still in fighting form. So that's what my prediction for Blasphemous 2 is going to be. Am I right? I don't fucking know. But I think it would be cool. And when Blasphemous 2 is released, I'm going to buy it, because after getting through the absolute literal cock and ball torture that is the beginning of this game before you have resources, this was a very good game. This was a very, very good Metroidvania. You definitely see the Dark Souls influence, but I like Dark Souls, so I'm totally on board with that. And as long as you can stand the imagery, because some people have problems with gore, some people have problems with religious imagery. So, I mean, it's kind of late now after however many hours I've been playing this, but content warning, religious imagery. If you can stand the content, I highly recommend you play this game. And I did not complete it. I uncovered maybe 90% of the map. I didn't get all the rosary beads. I didn't get all the prayers. I got all the relics. I got all the sword hearts, I think. But there were some side quests that I didn't do, and a few other things. Aspect unlocked, Son of the Miracle. Aspect unlocked, True Apostasy. Content warning, religious imagery. She says, after killing God. Oh, I didn't see what I unlocked. I assume it's Sacred Sorrows there. But yeah, let me, let's see. Chantress of the Dead, Echo and Shadow, Exemplaris Excommunications, Alms for Oblivion, True Apostasy. Okay, I'm just going to leave it on Wounds of Eventide. First sorrow of the brother, second sorrows. Okay, so this must be like a challenge thing. I'm not going to do New Game Plus, but there is one thing in it that I'm going to try to show off. And then I'm going to get a YouTube video of the endings that we didn't get so we can see them just for completeness' sake. And then I'm going to raid somebody. Elevate your save game to true torment mode, starting your journey from the beginning, but keeping hold of your equipment and the upgrades you've unlocked along the way. In this mode, the penitent one's pilgrimage is considerably more dangerous, and access to the altar of penitence is unlocked. Custodia hides secrets that will only be revealed to those who walk this path. Ascent is permanent. There is no going back. Yes, let's ascend. We have got the Petrified Bell. We'll watch the intro cutscene again. It's been a while.
Because it is my guilt,
I claim you, grievous miracle. Make my chest hurt with regret. Forge your punishment and nail it deep. Shape my guilt once again.
Oh, it's not a statue of the Pope, it's a statue of the kid in the Knot of the Three Words. So, okay, so the sword, the hilt of the sword is basically a crucifix.
And thus, guilt, repentance, mourning, and every pain of the soul of all kind were visibly and tangibly manifested everywhere and in all of us. Sometimes in the form of blessing and grace, sometime in the form of punishment and corruption. That divine will, equally pious and cruel, which we could not and will never be able to unravel, was called the miracle.
Except we did unravel it. We kind of beat the crap out of God. So, the intro cutscene probably also needs some explanation. And I didn't do this the first time around. I actually looked this up in the interim. So, the woman hitting herself with the statue, that happened a long-ass time ago. Like, that was one of the first manifestations of the miracle. That happened way fucking long ago. The penitent one pulling the sword out happened relatively recently. And then the question of, you know, okay, we got that, but how did we get down here on this pile of bodies? Well, you remember Chrysanta? Chrysanta is the one who did this. Our order was excommunicated, and Chrysanta, presumably with the help of some troops, exterminated all of us. And we pulled the sword out, we fought Chrysanta, Chrysanta slapped our shit and threw us down here into the mass grave. There's a tie-in comic that details that story. So, if that helps the intro cutscene make a little bit more sense, because there is a lot of, like, stuff that was cut. Well, not cut. It's just not, like, explicitly said, here's how it works. Wonder, do I have... I do. Also, what's this? Strange flower sprouting from the very rock itself in payment for an incomplete penance. Excuse me, incomplete? Its stem bends when no one looks at it, pointing towards the forest of the holy line. The stone petals are signs of the sorrowful miracle, warnings that something sleeping must wake. Why have you chosen me? Why do I feel you in my flesh, in my skin, in my blood? Punishment. Say at least one word so I can understand why you keep me prisoner between sleep and wakefulness. May my body break for you, my arms be bound for you, my eyes awaken when you call me by name. Confine me to that stone room and let the stone itself be the key that sets me free. Also, we can get up here immediately this time. Because we already have the blood perpetuated in sand. So, let's see if there's anything over here in New Game Plus. We got Tears of Atonement, probably because I picked up whatever that was in New Game, and the doors to the church are closed. Okay. You know, I could always just... Let's see, which one is it? Yes, descend into bottomless abysses. I missed. You. That's how you get that up there. Let's go on. Let's actually show the one thing that I know is new, and it has to do with that petrified bell. Point towards the Forest of the Holy Line, so we have to get there, which means we have to leave the Brotherhood here, and there is one boss that stands in our way. Do I have a sword heart? I have some sword hearts. Oh. This is new. Choose your penitence. Okay, let's see. Penitence of the unwavering faith. Your sword arm weakens. Mea culpa's attacks are half as effective. Your mind is stronger. Your determination and endless supply of fervor. Fervor regenerates over time. Pain makes you lose concentration. The damage suffered reduces your fervor stocks. Penitence of true guilt. Failure is unacceptable. Upon death, all your tears of atonement are placed on your guilt fragment. Regret overcomes you. Your guilt level reaches maximum once you fall in battle. Nothing can ease your pain. Bioflasks will not heal you, refilling your fervor instead. That's shitty. And Penitence of the Bleeding Heart. Your skin is torn. Only your will keeps you going. Every attack you receive makes you lose one life orb. Your sacred equipment is afflicted by the miracle. Bioflask regenerates several orbs over time, but suffering damage stops this process. Your enemies are relentless. They will respawn every time you come back to an area. Or no penance. Which is what we're going to do. Actually, no. We'll take the Bleeding Heart. Yeah. Okay. So now, instead of a life bar, we've got 3 life orbs. We can take 3 hits. And our bioflasks will regenerate over time. Or, well, they'll regenerate life orbs over time. So, we're kind of in pseudo Hollow Knight mode now. Shit. Fucked up my dodge. Okay. Luckily, this is, as far as I know, the only boss that's going to stand in my way. Let's see. Okay, I do still have all of my skills. Can I change my oath? I can abandon it if I want to. But let's not. Let's try to do this. This is going to give an little bit of extra content to an otherwise very short stream. Oh, I walked too far. I guess we're doing this. Ouch. Okay, second time's a charm. That, by the way, lore-wise, is one of Chrysanta's soldiers. However, I still don't know why the fuck we do this. Okay. Let me put that on, because that bell will ring when I'm near a secret. Easy boss is still easy. Yeah. But I mean, it's a tutorial boss. What do you expect? That's the Asylum Demon. Hello, Deo Gracias.
The cradle of affliction is what you seek. This can be found in the Mother of Mothers of the Churches. It is a remote...
Yeah. We've already been to the Mother of Mothers. We've already done this. I just want to see new content. Absolutely, most likely. Oh, wait a minute. I can talk to this corpse. Take that off. Put that on. No, I can't. Here? Yes! New content. This is not here until you're on New Game Plus. Welcome to Petrus. I hear footsteps up above me, beyond the roots. I hear a regular, raspy breathing from behind the rock. I hear the worms nearby slithering towards me. And more Quicksilver. I have given the petrified bell. Now that I think about it, this might actually be here, but you can't get in because you don't have the bell. Hydrate? Ah, thank you. All right. Let's see what's going to kick my ass in here. Oh. Hello? Are you a friend? Apparently you're a friend.
The light that you bring blinds my eyes. I am called Hibrael, held captive by the ancient miracle's plans since my arms grew, since the first creak of my crooked neck.
The ancient miracle. So apparently this miracle thing is a cycle.
The miracle named me the messenger of the Saita. Yeah. The Saita is the song, the genuine pure melody, and very, very old. It has the power to make the roots of the miracle unearth the hidden depths. What has already been forgotten, where the truly forbidden sleeps. That which awaits you. But we find ourselves in a mere abandoned chamber. After our encounter, the miracle will take me where the Saita will be able to resonate in all its grace. The Amana Cedars of the miracle await you. Until then, penitent one.
Oh, okay. I thought that was just more roots and stuff binding his arms. No, that's a trumpet. Someone unwound a trumpet and then used it to, like, bind his arms together. else here? No.
The Amanasitas of the Miracle.
The Amanasitas of the Miracles. Well, I don't know what that means, but apparently I might actually poke around at New Game Plus. Although not on stream, because I'm sure it's going to be an exercise in frustration. Oh? You're new.
It is not possible. That which bears hundreds of years of oblivion has returned. It has returned.
What?
It is not that which it has.
Don't fucking play the pronoun game with me, Deogracius. Just tell me what it is. Tell me what's going to murder me horribly. Okay, let me take that off and put on the nail uprooted in the dirt so that I can actually move through this. Clavicle, more bones. Final knot of rosary rope, Pog. Okay, so there is actually a fair amount of hidden content. Excuse you. I think I'm only going to go as far as Albero.
There is no answer to our plea. The miracle has forsaken us, and my ornate throne turns its back on those who await here.
But yeah, so New Game Plus in this game is more than just making it harder. There's actually apparently a relatively substantial amount of new content. Because this area I don't think was there. I mean, it could have been, actually. This area could have been there in the base game. I just never found that hidden entrance. But this area here, Petrus, 100% was not. Hi, Mock. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day. Oh, yeah, it is after midnight. Happy Valentine's Day. At least everybody who's on the Eastern Seaboard. Okay. We ain't done yet? Actually, no. I think I am going to call it here. It's been about an hour and a half, which is less than I expected, but I didn't expect to beat Chrysanta on the first try. Actually, excluding the final form of Escobar, I think... Oh, with the game overall. No, I might come back to it sometime. I think what I'm going to do is I'll just put this on the back burner and say we'll come back to this if I need something to stream and don't have any other plans. Although I might go back and cancel the whole Penance of the Bleeding Heart thing. But yeah, I want to thank you all for joining me for this one. I'm glad that I finally played through it and beat it because, like I said, after you get past the beginning, which is stupidly difficult, it's actually a very enjoyable and very well-made game. But yeah, I'm glad you had fun, Till. I hope everybody had fun. I hope everybody had fun hanging out. But as for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop back over to chatting for a minute here. Because that's the end of this game for now, but it's not going to be the complete end of the stream. I am going to get the endings we missed on YouTube, just for completeness' sake. And then we're going to find somebody to raid. So give me a moment here as my computer screams out in pain as I open Chrome. Plus there is all the DLC. No, actually we did all the DLC. It's actually all coterminous with the base game. The ending we got there was DLC. Happy Valentine's Day, Azari. Love you, dear. Thank you for dropping in. Alright, so... let's see here. Let me get these videos up. Alright. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my display capture now. There we are, and we'll be able to see, we're gonna see the bad ending first, and then the good ending. Is there a specific boss that you would say is particularly messed up? How do you define messed up? Do you mean like this is a bad boss, or this is particularly fucking hard, or this is just extremely disturbing? Because if you're talking bad boss design, aside from some slightly dodgy hitboxes and the fact that contact damage in a game like this doesn't make sense, there really aren't any. Balls hard is definitely Chrysanta, unless you do what I did and get the cheesy "you're invincible for a while" prayer. Visually disturbing, I would say my vote for the most visually disturbing boss is either Our Lady of the Charred Visage, or I forget his name, but there's one boss in the Silent Canvases that is a giant baby being held by a wicker man and protected by a wicker snake. And I don't know what triggers it, but he has a move where the baby in the background literally starts screaming, grabs you, and tears you in half. It is an instant kill if you get hit by it. Yeah, honestly, like the giant baby thing is the most visually disturbing for my money. Most of the bosses aren't like Our Lady of the Charred Visage is probably the most disturbing outside of that one because like she's, when I say charred visage, I mean like her flesh is dripping off and her brain is exposed, and that's her weak point. But I guess I'm just a little desensitized to gore in games like this because I didn't find any of the bosses that disturbing. But I don't know. I mean, your mileage may vary. The baby boss definitely hit some notes of do not want for me. Okay. So let's watch the endings here. We'll see the two that we missed, and I'll tell you how to get them as well, because I do know that. So first, the bad ending. Literally just make it to His Holiness Escobar and kill him, but don't do anything needed for the good or the canon endings.
In my dreams, I heard your footsteps coming closer. In my dreams, I tried to talk.
Hang on, I probably got to turn this up.
And introduce myself. Guardian of the miracle and of the miracle banner, with great pain I carry the emblem of the Father. I am the hands of bloodied skin. I am the eyes from which our mother gazes. But nothing I know of you, apart from your cold, nameless visage.
also kind of curious to see what kind of build this person was using.
Apart from the mourning of your deaths. No, I know nothing of you. Only the miracle knows. Now may your sword full of guilt with mine of gold collide. Let them hurt and march in procession. I curse you forever in name. I bless you forever in death.
Alright, never mind, it's gonna cut out the fights. Which is probably good, because otherwise this would be very long.
Shattered the mirror in which you saw me asleep. Now you see me awoken as the son of the true miracle.
What do you have that gives you the baby familiars? I never got that. Anyways, yeah, so Escobar becoming the five-armed red man was always in the game, but unexplained until the last DLC, because that ending didn't exist.
You have freed his holiness from his afflicted torment, and now he walks by the old processions on the other side of the dream. The cradle of the grievous miracle, the final relic. The grail of blood and gold that emanated from the forehead of the Father as he silently lamented the moment of his blessed twisting. That first relic is here, at the top of the Ashen Mountain, next to the Tern throne, where His Holiness was kissed by a miraculous pain. And now, your final communion with the miracle awaits. Only you will be able to know how much of it has seeped into your guilty heart. Your communion with the
So if you do not do everything required for the good ending, you can see that the ash slows you down. Your armor is too heavy, and you unfortunately do not make it to the top. Sink into the ash and die.
The mountain of ashes that swallowed up sins and sinners alike has had no mercy on you either. At the mercy of the miracle you were, and at the mercy of the miracle you remain. You are no longer anything but one more anonymous visage, without a voice, without countenance. Your penitence is over.
On the plus side, we don't get brought back to life after that, which means our penitence is actually over and done with. So if you get the bad ending, things are still shit for everyone in Custodia, but at least you're no longer being tortured. So we're going to take a look at the good ending now, and we'll see what you have to do to get it. If the video doesn't tell us, I'll tell you. The baby boss with Garfield as the wicker person? Oh god. Okay, so it's going to skip right to the boss, so I'll describe what you have to do to get this. The first thing you have to do is, from one of the merchants, you need to buy the Immaculate Pearl Bead. And what that does is, when you die, you don't drop a guilt fragment. You keep your maximum fervor, you don't accrue any guilt, but the bead starts to become corrupted. You need to fully corrupt that bead into the true weight of guilt. Then you need to go to all the confessor statues. Having the true weight of guilt will let you break the statues, and there's like a little enemy arena you have to complete. And in doing so, you take all the guilt that the statues have accrued into yourself. And you have to do this at every single one. In doing so, it will evolve the thorn in the hilt of your sword. Basically, you take all the guilt and all the sin of everyone in Custodia into yourself. And then you have to come here and fight Escobar.
In my dreams, I heard your footsteps coming closer. In my dreams, I tried to talk to you and introduce myself. Guardian of the miracle and of
Yes,
the miracle.
unironically, you become Jesus.
I carry the emblem of the Father. I am the hands of bloodied skin. I am the eyes from which our mother gazes. But nothing I know of you, apart from your cold, nameless visage, apart from your calloused and wounded hands, apart from the mourning of your deaths. No, I know nothing of you. Only the miracle knows. Now may your sword full of guilt with mine of gold collide. Let them hurt and march in procession. I curse you forever in name. I bless you forever in death.
Yeah. This bit is not changed.
You have shattered the mirror in which you saw me asleep. Now you see me awoken as the son of the true miracle.
Honestly, the first form of this guy is kind of a pushover too. Like, he takes so much fucking damage, which makes sense because he's a decrepit old man. And then, yep, the last son of the miracle again. And he goes off into the dream. And then we get to see what happens after you've taken the weight of all the guilt of everyone in Custodia into yourself.
You have freed His Holiness from his afflicted torment, and now he walks by the old processions on the other side of the dream. The cradle of the grievous miracle, the final relic. The grail of blood and gold that emanated from the forehead of the Father as he silently lamented the moment of his blessed twisting. That first relic is here, at the top of the Ashen Mountain, next to the Turned Throne, where His Holiness was kissed by a miraculous pain. And now, your final communion with the miracle awaits. Only you will be able to know how much of it has seeped into your guilty heart.
The answer is all of it. All of it has seeped into her guilty heart. And somewhat paradoxically, with our hearts so heavy with guilt, we can climb the mountain unabated. Make it to the throne. And we sacrifice ourselves and turn into a tree for reasons. Blame the miracle. But in the process, you're right. We effectively become Jesus. We become the new figurehead of this religion, and it becomes a religion not of guilt, but of forgiveness. Kind of.
And thus came the moment of final communion with the sword born of guilt. A last sacrifice in order to finish penance and break off with the ungodly will of the grievous miracle. But the plans of the miracle are capricious. Penance never ends, but changes, hurts, and condemns at will. There is no place for the penitent one on the other side of the dream. His place is here among us. He is the new father and the last son of the miracle, recipient of our prayers forever and ever.
So yeah, we break off with the miracle and become the figurehead of this religion. I think it means the miracle only affects us now. But
And thus shall your name be erased under the heavens.
of course, yeah. They couldn't let it go with just that. So the good ending even sets up a sequel, but it's not the sequel we're going to get. We're getting the one that comes off of the giant heart in the sky. So here's a question for everybody who's still here. I've got half a mind to see if I can't find like a lore explanation video that talks about the overall story of the game. Is that something you guys would want to watch, or should I just find somebody to raid? I'll let you decide. Because at this point, I'm just chilling. I'm just happy to have beaten the game. My call? We got one vote for. One vote for? Yeah. Okay. Let's see if I can find one. As long as it's not like 3 hours long. Blasphemous lore. Okay. 48 minutes. So this will be a fair amount of content. But after this, we are 100% going to go raid somebody else.
Blasphemous is a flawless game, and it's one of the best stories I've seen in recent years. Its story is mysterious, but not so mysterious to where the story doesn't start making any sense. The lore is there, and it is packed with information. But besides all that, the game had some other specialties in store for me. The stories of video games are often crafted to invoke something in the player, whether it's the feeling of power by becoming a godlike figure, having the game force us to question our own morals, or even just getting us to learn something new. Blasphemous never made me feel powerful, quite the opposite, actually, and I wasn't questioning any of my beliefs, but I did learn a lot from this game. Religion as a subject is not something I'm very knowledgeable about. Still, I find religion itself extremely fascinating, which is why I enjoyed playing Dante's Inferno so much despite not knowing much of what was going on. And Blasphemous was the same. I not only learned about its lore within the game, but also the many references and connections to real life.
That's actually a good point. I know fuck all about religion, and I'm not a religious person in the slightest, but I do find it very fascinating. And I think the fact that I personally identify as, I think if you put a gun to my head, I would say an agnostic theist. I believe that there is something more than the physical world, but I believe that we cannot understand what it is. The fact that I can do that and I can look at different religions and different mythologies and see what they have to offer, I think is good. Because there's a lot of very interesting stories out there in other religions that people don't know about. Like, I remember in college, we had, I want to say a Hare Krishna, but I don't think that's right. But we had someone who came to our campus and was giving out religious material. And I'm not talking pamphlets. I was talking like he was handing out copies of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a Hindu holy book, I believe. And I read a little bit of it, and it was interesting. It's not like the Bible where it's like a big creation myth. The Bhagavad Gita is the story of two warring princes, I believe. Two princes were at war with each other, and both of them prayed to Krishna for victory. And Krishna was like, okay, well, I obviously can't help both of you. I have to pick one of you to win. But I think I have a way to make it fair. And to the first prince, Krishna granted all of his divine armies. And to the second prince, he said, I will personally drive your chariot for you. And the rest of the book is literally just the dialogue between this one prince and Krishna himself. I haven't read the whole thing. I actually haven't made it very far into it. But what I did read, it's quite interesting. And if you have an interest, like a scholarly interest in mythology, I recommend it.
Life religion and how that shaped the game's world. It's not necessary to incorporate outside content into a game like this, but if you do, it can further heighten the experience. So today, I want to talk about Blasphemous and its story, and not only explain to you what's going on, but how well crafted the story truly is. So let's get started. Before we continue though, I wanted to give a quick shout out to a new project that has been recently brought to my attention. Lost in Cult is a gaming journal that delves into various topics about the industry, as well as other topics within games themselves, like stories, mechanics, and much more. Currently, there are 3 magazines that you can buy physically or digitally, but the one I want to focus on is their newest entry. The softcover version is great as it has some wonderful art, but the premium and deluxe edition has some beautiful art from Elden Ring. This specific magazine will have a lot of artwork about the Souls games in it, and also a lot of pages dedicated to From Software's impact on the industry as a whole. Seeing as we recently just talked about the Souls games, I'd figured I'd bring it to your attention in case this is something you were interested in. I'll leave a link to the website down below if you want to see it for yourself, but with that done, let's get back to the video. So the intro of Blasphemous is actually extremely confusing, as it shows a woman pounding her chest with a miniature statue and then getting stabbed through the chest. Shortly after, a person picks up the weapon, but then is seen waking up in a field of corpses. Usually I wait a bit to explain what's going on, but for Blasphemous that is not the case, so allow me to catch you up to speed right away. Blasphemous takes place in the land of Custodia, and its inhabitants are very religious. Everything from the NPCs to the environment to the character design all leads back to religion. Even our main character is religious, as he is the recently awoken being known as the Penitent One. Blasphemous references some bits of Christianity and Catholicism, but also focuses on some of the Spanish versions of them. The reason I say Spanish is because of our main character. A penitent is defined as someone who repents their sins and seeks forgiveness from God. This also relates to the word penance, which is an act or set of actions that are done out of repentance for the sins that a person committed. The Penitent One's penance was a vow of silence, which is an interesting way to canonize a silent protagonist. honest. But there are many forms of penance, like with Chrysanta, who we'll discuss later in the game, who walks without sight. The one thing they have in common, though, is their helmets. They're similar to the capriote, a mask that originated in Spain and Hispanic countries that was made to draw attention away from themselves and instead towards God. So already we're seeing the major connections between this game and real-world religion, but you can't really have a belief system without something being the main head of that belief. Well, in Custodia, its residents worship the Miracle. The Miracle is a supernatural entity, but it has no body. It's only ever been seen through the acts it's done. For example, the Miracle was the reason that woman in the intro died. That sounds quite awful, but the key distinction is that she wanted this to happen. She wished to be punished, the Miracle just made it happen. Furthermore, a person known as Deo Gracias will tell us about the first miracle, about how a young boy wished for pain so that he may ease the guilt in his heart. The Miracle then took the log he was sitting on and had it grow roots that attached to the boy's arms and legs, contorting and twisting his body into an odd pose. This was known as the first miracle, but the boy is also known as the Father, or the Twisted One, who is the being in the background in the first level and is the being on the sword and statue. Despite what seems to be acts of violence and torture, the people of Custodia see this as holy and even worship the sites in which the events took place. The Miracle to me is so fascinating. It'll make more sense when we talk about the endings, but what I find so incredible is that because the Miracle is so unfathomable to normal humans, the people of Custodia have no other choice than to see it as a god. And as we'll see, there is a lot of pain and suffering that has occurred at the hands of the Miracle, which is why the inhabitants of the land are constantly praying, hoping for a way to rid themselves of their guilt. They see these acts of punishment as necessary, as they feel like they did something wrong and thus deserve their pain. As for the Penitent One, he has a rather vague backstory. He was a part of the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrow. They, however, were massacred, as evident by the hundreds of bodies. What this Brotherhood was and what it did to deserve this is unknown, but it is assumed to have been excommunicated or cast out by the current Pope Escobar. During the game's development, a comic was released called The Kneeling, which shows the Penitent One claiming the sword called the Mea Culpa before getting killed by a woman named Chrysanta. Chrysanta guards Escobar, so it's clear that she's affiliated with the church. Furthermore, the first boss in the game is the Warden of the Silent Sorrow, who appears again later around the outskirts of the church itself. This might imply that they serve Escobar as well, or maybe are affiliated with the Miracle in some way. It's clear though that Escobar dislikes the Brotherhood for some reason, but I think the Miracle disagrees, since the Penitent One, while killed, was revived by the Miracle. It's not explicitly said that this is the case, but both Chrysanta and the other woman in the comic named Desamparato seem to imply this is the case. Desamparato says in reference to the Miracle, "Now it has focused its thought on you, and it begins to know you. Proof of its first gift was that your vow of silence is forever irreversible. But don't worry, even if I don't have your voice, I have your purpose, for I am a guide and scholar in the ways of the Miracle." Chrysanta in the following pages will then say, "If the Miracle has really pointed out to you, you will arise again upon the dead, before the pain of the statue of the Twisted Father, who will watch over you." This implies that the Miracle has chosen the Penitent One for some reason. This might connect to a possible theory that Escobar murdered the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrow because of something they knew about the Miracle, or possibly because they were against the Miracle in some way. Regardless though, all we know is that the goal of the Penitent One is to find the Cradle of Affliction. So, that's our objective. Go to the church and obtain this Cradle of Affliction. Doing so will allow the Penitent One to complete his penance and be forgiven for his sins. Once again, this is not given to us at all like how I explained it, as it's sprinkled throughout character dialogue and item descriptions, but now that a good portion of the background has been revealed, you can see how something like this has the potential to be a really fantastic story. It has tons of lore regarding its setting and backstory, as well as some of the key players involved in the story and what they represent within the game world. It's a magnificent story, and we're only just beginning. And new beginnings often mean a restart. Earlier we talked about this game's connections to real-world religion, and the intro continues this, as the Penitent One, after killing the Warden of the Silent Sorrow, will cut into its side and pour its blood into his helmet. This to me seems like a baptism. The Penitent One, like us, is beginning a new life and a new journey, and thus a baptism is needed to make it official. Not only is this such an interesting theory, but this act also has ties to Christianity, as the piercing of the side references Jesus being pierced in the side, at least according to John 19:34. It's explained in that Bible verse that Jesus had blood and water pouring out of his side when stabbed with a spear, and baptisms are usually with water, so the blood and water combination could be a reference to this. Furthermore, the Penitent One also has the crown of thorns on his helmet, the same ones worn by Jesus. As I said in the beginning of the video, learning not just the in-game lore but the real-world connections heightened my experience of the game, and while this may not be seen as a valid argument for a critique, I wouldn't have done any of this had the game not intrigued me. It's why some people get interested in specific settings like the lands of Egypt and Italy thanks to Assassin's Creed. Blasphemous hooked me enough to not only care about its actual story, but also what inspired them to create the story in the first place. After we leave the building, we can meet with Deo Gracias, who explains a bit of what I mentioned before, like the Cradle of Affliction, but he also tells us how to get there. The cradle is in the Mother of Mothers Church, but to gain entry to the building, we need to carry out the 3 humiliations to gain access to the building. Deo Gracias will also give us a thorn. The thorn's item description and some of his dialogue imply that he is the narrator for the miracle, and he will eventually give us a lot of much needed information during our travels. When he gives us the thorn, he says that if when the time comes, the thorn has sprouted enough to cut us, then we will be at the mercy of the grievous miracle. Pain, guilt, humiliation, all of this relates to the game's core idea and its endings. Our character is on a pilgrimage to absolve their penance. A pilgrimage is often done by people who want to travel to religious sites, and we're attempting to go to a holy site that houses the Cradle of Affliction. But getting there shouldn't be easy, especially when one is under penance. We have to work for it. In a gameplay sense, that's why we must overcome the various difficult bosses and enemies that block our path, but in a more narrative sense, we need to take this guilt that we are consumed by, recognize it, and absolve it, but if we're going to do that, we should probably get moving. The 2 things that will have immediately caught your attention are the gameplay and the art style. The art style is not only based around Catholic and medieval architecture, but it's done in a pixelated format. I've never seen anything like it before, and I was blown away every single time something new came on my screen. You'll meet the first warden and then be drawn in by his unique look, to which you start wondering what the other bosses might look like. And then you'll meet beings like Exposito and the Melquiades and are constantly amazed that the quality of these designs never faltered throughout the entire runtime. Honestly, this game has some of the best looking bosses.
Exposito. That's the name of the baby boss, Exposito. This guy I didn't find disturbing at all. The most disturbing thing about this guy is the weird hands holding him up. Otherwise, he's just a skeleton. And I can't think of skeletons as anything but kind of silly anymore, honestly.
Bosses I've ever seen, and I really think it's the pixel art that sells this. I doubt these bosses would have looked terrible in a more realistic engine like the modern Souls games, but by going with a pixel art design, it makes you look at these bosses a bit differently. Usually the bosses are where most of the time goes when it comes to visual design since they are the finale, but every character in this game seems to have just as much time put into them as these bosses. It's so well done, I don't even have to cherry pick them to read.
I mean, yeah, spooky, scary skeletons, but that's literally a meme. And honestly, kind of a banger of a song. Like, you can make skeletons scary. But just a skeleton, like Melquiades there, they're not scary. They're kind of goofy looking, honestly.
Reinforce my argument. Josierno, Altis Gracias, the Lady of the Six Sorrows, these women who used the statue they were tied up on as a weapon, and whatever this is, all of them are stunning. I mean this with no exaggeration. Not a single boss, enemy, or NPC ever looked visually disappointing or out of sync with the game's themes, and that's the reason why. If there's one thing a majority of these beings share with one another, it's that they're all grotesque and disgusting, yet no matter how much I want to avert my eyes, I can't stop staring at them. The art of Blasphemous is one of the best designs I've ever seen and was a joy to look at throughout the whole game. As for the gameplay, I don't even know where to begin. It's just fantastic. Blasphemous was the first Metroidvania I've actually played, and this was such a wonderful way to be welcomed into this genre. I've said before how I love when games tie combat into narrative even if it's minor, and Blasphemous does that by making the combat difficult, as this connects with the difficult journey that the penitent one must take to absolve themselves. Blasphemous is a hard game. There's no getting around it. When it comes to bosses, there are so many moving parts that'll make you feel like you need another set of eyes in order to understand what's going on. And even when the game slows.
Welcome to the stream, Stuffy Snooze. We actually just beat Blasphemous tonight, and I'm capping things off with a little bit of a lore explanation because it's kind of opaque.
Down the pace in between the boss fights, the levels can be mind-numbingly painful to traverse. I must have been stuck in the Graveyard of the Peaks for over an hour because this entire climb is covered in at least 30 enemies, all of whom can hit extremely hard, and there are traps and falling platforms placed next to them, so you aren't allowed to focus on traversal or combat separately.
Valid. That area sucked. Mostly because of the instant death pits.
You need to pay attention to both. The game at times is also extremely stingy with its checkpoints, and due to the level design, there are only a few sections you might be able to bypass just by walking, meaning most of the time, a death will require you to battle all the enemies you just fought again. It's torturous and explicitly designed to torment you, and we haven't even gotten to the true torment yet. Just like with the art design, the gameplay does not disappoint. The gameplay is fast-paced, fluid, and intense, and the art design is this unique blend that goes from barbaric medieval cages and chains to glossy and ornate walls and flooring. Blasphemous is one of the most unique and enjoyable games I've ever played, and while the regular levels and enemies do highlight a lot of the game's qualities, many people will notice it in the bosses, which is where it truly shines. 3 bosses stand between us and the 3 humiliations: the Ten Pedad, the Tres Angutias, and Our Lady of the Charred Visage, and the stories of these beings are rather intriguing. To get to any of them, though, the player must visit Alborough. Tirso is a part of a group called the Kisser of Wounds that seek to help the sick and dying. We surprisingly get a lot of information about Tirso, and this is by far one of the best additions made to Blasphemous. The game has been considered a Souls-like by many, and one of the reasons why is because this game uses item descriptions to tell its story, so Souls players will feel rather comfortable with this format, and, excuse the pun, I'm sorry, Blasphemous feels like a miracle when it comes to item descriptions, as instead of the Dark Souls series, which could have at most a sentence or 2 of lore, Blasphemous is completely comfortable throwing out paragraphs of information to us. For example, Tirso wants us to find some healing items for him because the Brotherhood is running out, and each of these healing items has a piece of the puzzle that will make up the story of Alborough and the Kisser of Wounds. The first part of the story reads, quote, "It was not just hearsay anymore. The illness had reached Alborough without warning. The outbreak and the punishment of the miracle, so often discussed, came through a young man who arrived to our small congregation full of fear, wondering what his unforgivable sin had been to receive such a condemnation. And what could we do, a group of plain and profane healers blind to the vague wills of the miracle? Pray, begging for its forgiveness? What would our sacrifice have to be for our prayers to be heard? At the mercy of the miracle was that young man, and at the mercy of the miracle were left the rest of us with him. It wasn't long before more and more people came to us, affected by that terrible and unknown suffering. Whole families, the old, the young, and even the newborn. We brothers of the congregation were unable to cope, and our care was not working, nor were our ointments, nor our constant prayers. We are lost, submerged in the darkness of uncertainty." That was only 3 items, and it has not only provided us with so much to read, but also provided so much background to the world itself. The miracle had created some sort of sickness, and the congregation was unable to help them. But the second half of the story will tell us the rest. Quote, "On one of the nights during which the young man agonized amidst terrible febrile tremors, with the wounds that plagued his body spreading more and more, I approached him so distraught that I held him in my arms, and shedding tears, I kissed him on the forehead. While I felt the ardor of his forehead on my lips, I noticed the young man was opening his eyes and looking at me, his agony apparently gone all of a sudden. Congregation members witnessing the phenomenon watched in astonishment except for one of our sisters, who knelt beside me and without fear of contagion, kissed one of the terrible sores that the affliction had caused on the young man, and the wound began to close. The brothers fell to their knees amidst tears and prayers. Ever since then, our pious kisses have saved hundreds from the affliction of the miracle that ravages these lands, and from then our congregation has been called that of the Kisser of Wounds. The second half of the story seems to...
I think more what he's saying here is that it's not that the lore of the Souls game is bad or that every item needs lore. It's that this game specifically gives you a lot more than the Souls game. Because this game, it'll give you the item description in game terms, and then has a completely separate screen that gives you the story behind the item, which isn't something that Souls ever did. It gave you one screen of, here's what the item does, and here's a story behind it, maybe. So if you're willing to read a lot, this game gives you a lot more to work with as far as piecing together.
To imply that the miracle had possibly granted Tirso and the congregation magical healing powers that allowed them to combat the sickness the miracle has spread. This story is likely inspired by St. Francis of Assisi, which is, oddly enough, the one piece of Christian knowledge I actually know about. St. Francis, in his early days, saw people he called lepers, which were people affected with leprosy, as nauseating. But after his visions and talks with God, he began to appreciate these beings and would help the sick by feeding them and kissing their wounds, just like Tirso. One thing to keep in mind, many of the conditions we see the people or bosses in are most likely a result of the miracle. Deo Gracias tell us that the miracle works in mysterious ways, and it's unable to be unraveled, meaning we'll never know its true intentions, which are why so many of the people we talk to will say things along the lines of, "What did I do to deserve this?" or "What has upset the grievous miracle?" They're confused as to why they're being punished and what their sins were that led them to this punishment, which makes the ending of this game such a revelation. Getting back to Alborough, in case things go wrong though, the other group located here, called the Order of the True Shine, gives those who have passed on a proper burial. Since this game is based in Catholicism, game, it's safe to assume a version of heaven or hell exists within the belief system, and while we don't really get to see a form of that in the game, we do get a place called the Dream. We'll learn a bit more about the Dream later, but there's really not a whole lot of information surrounding it, like who's allowed to enter or how the place even exists in the first place, but to me it seems like some otherworldly place that acts as a sort of purgatory, but it's a bit unclear. After Albro, the player can go
That's
one
fair.
of three ways, but each way leads to one of the three bosses we talked about earlier. Sadly, not much is known about the levels we walk through in-game, but we are able to gather some information from the environment, like the wasteland of buried churches housing lots of people who are strung up on posts in the same pose as the Twisted One, implying that they are most likely being executed or put to death in the same manner. Or even how in the snowy areas before the Covenant building at the higher tops of the map, there are frozen bodies everywhere, and from some item descriptions, we can discover that these were nuns who made pilgrimages up here in order to attend the Covenant at the very top. Not many of these areas are like Albro that have paragraphs worth of story, but the small details we learn can help contextualize a lot of the events that occur in Custodia, which is helpful. Recontextualization is something that will happen a lot during the playthrough, such as with the three bosses blocking our path to the Mother of Mothers Church. After the defeat of each boss, we can find a large room with a figure inside, and by prostrating ourselves in front of it, we can be taken into the Dream. In each location is a head called the Golden Visage, and these heads were likely the three beings behind the bars we saw just moments ago, and according to some item descriptions, were some of the holiest of saints that were granted this job by the Miracle. That job is to hold on to the three holy wounds that, when put together, will open the door to the Mother of Mothers Church. The names of these wounds are Attrition, Contrition, and Compunction, and each of these items has a design in the middle, which is possibly referencing the three bosses we face, as the Contrition wound shows three pointed hats, similar to the same hats worn by the Trace and Gutias, and the image of the Compunction has two different colors, one of gold and one of red, just like the face of the Charred Visage. This means that these were deliberately placed here, and that these wounds connect to the bosses. Attrition is defined as a desire to not sin other than the love of God. Contrition is defined as someone not sinning because of God's love, which means that these two words are opposites. And compunction is defined as a feeling of guilt or remorse. Attrition is the holy wound guarded by the Ten Pedad. In English, the boss's name means have mercy or be merciful, most likely referencing the attrition part. According to some item descriptions, it seems that there is a living person inside this horrific creature, and that they are, as they say, alive in a sleeping body. This being was most likely punished by the Miracle and turned into this creature. In fact, this could be the same creature from the introduction. Relating this back to the holy wound of attrition, while we don't know what their sin is, we can assume that they were most likely praying to the Miracle for forgiveness, but only because they didn't want to be punished and not because they appreciated the love of the Miracle, which is why this person was condemned to this fate. The holy wound of contrition is guarded by the Trace and Gutias, which means three anguishes or three sorrows. These three women may actually be manifestations of another being found here called Altus Gracias. To even get them to spawn, we need to place down specific items which have lore descriptions that tell us that there were three sisters that all prayed together and likely wished not to be wedded. The Miracle must have heard their prayers and answered them by turning them into the hideous beast we see in front of us. Since their holy wound is contrition, these three prayed to the Miracle out of love for it, but were seemingly tuned out or not believed by the Miracle and thus condemned to this fate. Finally, the holy wound of compunction is guarded by Our Lady of the Charred Visage. Despite its manly face, the Charred Visage is actually a woman named Aurea, who was seen as beautiful by the townsfolk. She became so well known and so beautiful that people saw her as a living, breathing image of God. She, however, felt guilty and didn't want to be seen as divine, so she burned her face with hot boiling oil so that she may never be seen as beautiful again. The Miracle had witnessed this act and decided to keep the flesh burning and searing as if it had just happened. This, however, led Aurea right back to where she started, as people started noticing that her face was continuing to burn and ache and once again saw it as an act of God. So now she is revered by many in the land, and a covenant has been built in her name. Those same nuns we talked about earlier that make the trek up here do so with the intention of worshipping her, and the first act of worship is to pour boiling oil on your face, similar to how Aurea did. So in her attempt to not be seen as a godlike figure, she ended up being worshipped anyway. Her holy wound of compunction is related to the original guilt and sorrow she felt when she was seen as a divine being, which is why her face is on the wound itself. One thing you'll have noticed is that a lot of the story seems to boil down to the Miracle being the cause for all of this, and we're not even close to done yet. Sakura was a girl that saw so many people put to death that she started feeling sorry for them and wished to take their pain away and instead have it be brought to her. Now she is in constant suffering and pain but can never die from the wounds. Nacimiento is another being we can find in-game, and while we don't know much about his past, we can see another face on his chest, and apparently the face on his chest ages forward, but his face ages backward. At some point we can see this being come coming out of his chest, and the final interaction is the ancient being now fully out of his chest, with Nacimiento presumably dead, or at the very least unable to speak to us. With the limited knowledge given, the player is forced to draw up conclusions. Why is the miracle doing this? And why is it causing harm? Which is why the placing of these next bosses felt intentional to me. The second half of the game seems set on confusing the player as to what the miracle is doing and what their true intentions are. In this second half, we can meet some of the bosses like Exposito, Melquiades, and Kirce. Exposito was a child that was blindfolded because his mother was about to be burned at the stake for being a witch, but before dying begged for someone to create a statue in her image so that the baby can feel safe. Someone did, and the miracle had recognized this act and decided to make it seemingly sentient, so now it can actually care for it as the mother would have. Exposito is supposed to show the player that it's not as harmful as it seems, and that there might be some actual reasoning behind its acts. This could also connect to the previous lore on the Twisted One and the Mea Culpa woman, because remember, they asked for this, they wanted the punishment. We also know that the Twisted One never complained, so it's not like he had second thoughts or felt regretful. He was content with his decision and the outcome. Yeah, some of the methods of the miracle might be a little bit odd and might be seen as harmful, but who are we to question the way of God? Many people say that everything happens for a reason, or that God has a plan for all of us, and while we might not agree with the plan, we have to assume it has our best interest at heart. Melquiades changes up the story quite a bit, as his story has nothing to do with the miracle at all. Using an item in the game that allows us to hear the thoughts of some of the corpses, we can read, quote, "I have witnessed the exhumation of the Archbishop. I have witnessed how they cleansed his bones in wine to then dress him in silk and gold. I saw them place the most beautiful jewels on his face and kiss his forehead. I watched as they placed rings on his fingers and kissed his hands. They lifted him up, calling his name, and swayed him to make it look like as if he was walking again." Melquiades isn't even alive. He's just a corpse that is being paraded around by a bunch of people. This is one of the few characters in the game not affected by the miracle. You could argue, though, that the miracle is moving his arms and is casting the magic, but given how awkward some of the movements are and how there are hands placed behind his back, it's possible that they could be moving his limbs too. Plus, there doesn't seem to be any lore suggesting that the miracle had a hand in this. He doesn't serve much to the story, but it's a nice change of pace, as it's not the miracle's doing, which was quite surprising. But then the game ends up doubling back and talking about the miracle again and its vicious acts, as Kirce was someone who was set to be burned at the stake because he was deemed a heretic. However, he was falsely accused. He was never able to convince the people that he wasn't a heretic and thus to burn for it. However, the flames that burned him were conjured up by the miracle, and now constantly burn and resurrect him for life, forcing him to feel the burning, searing pain every time he's revived. All of this caused such a massive headache within me, because now we have the miracle doing kind acts, and people are now being pricks and digging up old bodies, but the miracle isn't doing anything about it. I was so confused, and the game was relentless in its pursuit to purposely hide the mystery of the miracle. At this time in the game, I was convinced that Escobar and the church had something to do with this. The only reason I had this theory was because no one was being spared by this entity, yet the only people that seemingly weren't affected by it were Escobar and his people. This could also connect to the fact that he may have had the door of the Mother of Mothers church sealed unless someone obtained the 3 humiliations, but I was wrong about this too. As we know, Escobar was seen as the Pope or the head of the church that worshipped the miracle, but at some point before the events of the game, he had disrespected the miracle and was punished for it. Escobar on occasion will appear before entering certain areas and read off a line or two, then leave. One of the lines he says is, "The miracle has forsaken us, and my ornate throne turns its back on those who await here." Due to him believing that the miracle had forsaken him and the people, he rejected the miracle and was punished for it. Similar to the Twisted One, Escobar started sprouting branches and turned into a tree. And we can actually see the tree for ourselves when we first open up the door and when we're outside the church and able to see it from afar. The Holy Wound of Attrition says that His Holiness, because of his high penance, must endure suffering in his soul in 3 ways, which would mean that these wounds represent Escobar's suffering, because Escobar in the game is referred to as His Holiness. So not only are the people of Custodia at the mercy of the miracle, but the leader of the congregation, the literal Pope of the church, was being tormented by the miracle. As you can tell, everyone is at the mercy of this thing. It doesn't matter how powerful or insignificant that person is, as no one can surpass the power of a godlike entity, especially one that can't be seen. Admittedly though, this is probably starting to become a bit stale for some people. The game keeps using the miracle as the cause, and this keeps getting played out across the whole game. I've talked about this exact problem in previous videos, but where Blasphemous differs is that we're actually seeing different outcomes. Characters aren't just becoming demonic beings like the Ten Pedad, they're cursed with undeath, forced to be conjoined for eternity, or did something to themselves that the miracle took notice of. While the cause of the events is the same, the effects are not. And that's not only what makes the miracle so interesting, but also what makes the story so intriguing and mysterious. As Deo Gracias has told us many times, the miracle works in mysterious ways, and as you continue playing, you become more and more eager to learn about this miracle, what it has done to the people of Custodia, and what the people themselves did to receive this attention from the miracle. At the moment, it seems like the miracle is just punishing people for the sake of it, but that question of why is also in the back of your head. According to Tirso, the miracle created the sickness of Albaro, which would make it seem like a malevolent entity, but it's also assumed to have given Tirso the ability to kiss those wounds away, which would make it benevolent. That's why the miracle is so fascinating. You don't truly understand what it wants. All you can do is find the remnants of its actions and decide from there, which also makes the miracle equally as infuriating, since it's something we can't see. If something pisses us off in this game, then we can fight it, but we can't fight the miracle. You can't fight what you can't see after all. However, while we can't fight it, we can remove it. Partially. Many of the beings we come across can be saved because of us. Sakuro, Altis Gracias, the Lord of the Salty Shores, and Soledad can all be helped and possibly go to the other side and into the dream because of us. We can also help Tirso and the Brotherhood by giving them more ailments so they can help the sick. We can help the man located in the Augury by giving him all the bones back so they're able to rest in peace. And there's even other acts that we can perform that have nothing to do with the miracle. We can help Cleophas return to the Order of the True Shrine and prevent him from killing himself because we're giving him a new purpose in life. Rendento is able to travel to the holy site of his master because of our help, and Josierno will eventually be able to reunite with all his brethren if we manage to save them all. We as the Penitent One can help Custodia and save these people. We're able to take their guilt and sorrow for ourselves so that they can have the will to continue. But is this guilt we've accumulated enough? Can we truly say that our penance is complete, that we understand the true meaning of guilt, and that because of understanding this we should be absolved of our sins? Well, let's see. The final boss of the game is none other than Escobar. One of those lines that Escobar says when he was randomly appearing throughout the game is that he was reincarnated by the miracle. That's how he's able to be here while he should technically still be a giant tree blocking the church. He says quite a lot of dialogue before the fight, but one part I want to point to is when he says that he knows nothing about us, but only the miracle knows. This further solidifies the idea that the miracle revived us for a reason, and that reason has to do with the Cradle of Affliction. Escobar is a really easy fight, but this was meant to be, as his actual form, the last son of the miracle, is where the real fight begins. It's honestly a really nice fight, and a great way to cap off the game. It's not as complex, as intense as some other bosses, but Escobar comes with his own set of quirks that make the fight really engaging. As mentioned towards the start of the video, none of the bosses disappointed me visually or mechanically, and Escobar was no exception. After defeating Escobar, we meet with Deo Gracias one more time, and then we are told to climb the mountain. This mountain is covered in ash. Remember when Escobar was turned into a tree? Well, shortly after that happened, the tree burned for months. Once it finally subsided, all that was left was a mountain of ash, and at the top was his throne. Anyone who witnessed this immediately climbed the mountain in hopes of reaching the top, but all of them succumbed to the mound and were engulfed by the ash. Everyone who was swallowed became a part of the miracle's will. We can assume that majority, if not all the enemies we face, especially the ones that are skeletal, are people who were consumed by the mountain, and now the Penitent One joins its ranks. We didn't understand true guilt, and we were unable to climb the mountain. Deo Gracias puts us among a pile of other brethren, signifying that we're just one amongst the many who have died. I don't think this means that other penitent ones have existed or have tried to climb the mountain. I just think this means that we're just like our other brothers bracket the Brotherhood, and having our journey end here would have been like if we just died at the Silent Sorrow. We didn't accomplish anything and we didn't learn anything. So now we're just like the hundreds of bodies that are part of the congregation, faceless, nameless beings who are unknown to history. To climb the mountain, we're going to need guilt. True guilt. In Blasphemous, dying will drop a guilt fragment. From a gameplay sense, this forces us to start with less magic as it slowly consumes part of the bar. However, we can use an item called an Immaculate Bead, which stops the guilt from leaving our body as it is now put into the bead. After enough deaths, the bead will be completely filled with guilt, and according to its updated item description, it says that confessors would carry beads like this so that they could reap the guilt of members of the church. The confessor statues for a fee will absolve us of our guilt. This is helpful if you can't reach your last death point or you're just too lazy, but by destroying the statues, we can go inside a small pocket dimension and fight the guilt. Confessors were known to absolve people's guilt, so it makes sense that inside these portals is that guilt. There are 7 of them, and each one grows that thorn Deo Gracias gave us. He told us that by the time we reach the cradle, the thorn is piercing our skin and cutting into our fingers, then we would be at the mercy of the miracle. Completing the dungeon will grow the thorn, and we can see in the updated images that it's not only getting bigger, but more blood is being added to it. It's cutting deeper and deeper into our skin, so much so that by the end its original color can't even be seen. The name also changes as well. It starts as a thorn, then a sprout, then a Briar, but the final stage it becomes the Custodia of Sin. This is only accessible after defeating all the statues, and since the statues are the only places in Custodia to absolve guilt, we've essentially taken all of Custodia's guilt into our sword. This is enough to climb the mountain, as we are no longer slowed down by the coarse ash and are slowly sucked inside. We are able to climb as fast as before and push past our original barrier, and for the first time, someone has made it to the top of the mountain, untainted by its heavy burden, capable of dragging one down to its depths. The penitent one then sits on the throne and stabs themselves with the mea culpa, a sword that not only carries the guilt of the woman, the guilt of the penitent one, but the guilt of Custodia. The final communion will complete the penitent one's penance and break off the ungodly will of the miracle, but the miracle always works in mysterious ways. It's never going to truly disappear from Custodia. Penance and guilt come in all forms after all. Furthermore, the penitent one will not have the same fate as many of his colleagues. He'll be stuck here and unable to pass on to the dream because we're the new father and the last son of the miracle. We are the new Escobar. After defeating Escobar, Deo Gracias tells us that we have freed his holiness from his afflicted torment, and now he can walk onto the other side of the dream. So now the penitent one will have to wait for someone to do the same to him. For now though, Custodia will see him as the father and parade his wooded corpse throughout the land as a sign of the miracle. In a miraculous twist though, Crisanta arrives and pulls the sword out of us, possibly because she sees us as unworthy and not a true son of the miracle. This could also mean that all the guilt within the sword has gone free and possibly has restarted the game's events again back to the very beginning. Despite its tragic ending, it is seen as the good ending of the game. The penitent one has completed their penance and is now a holy figure of Custodia. What more could you want? Well, more content, actually, and Blasphemous decided to oblige and added a new DLC later called the Stir of Dawn. This DLC has some content we've already seen, as Nacimiento was added during this update, but if you want to experience all of it and see the actual content, you'll have to go to New Game Plus. The questline of Hebrael and the Amenacidas are only accessible in True Torment mode. This would be fine, but Blasphemous has a sort of New Game half plus, because while all the prayers, relics, hearts, and beads we have acquired stay, the upgrades don't. So while you can keep all the beads you acquired, you can't put on all 8 anymore. You're forced to go back to 2 and need to find the knots again. Furthermore, and possibly the worst part about this, is that the health and magic bars go back down to their original state, and any quicksilver and bile flasks used are reverted, meaning you start with the lowest health and flasks possible again, but now the enemies do 20% more damage and have more health. True Torment is an understatement. It is entirely possible to screw up the whole playthrough if you don't plan accordingly in the previous one. The relic that allows the player to negate all damage for a few seconds was a godsend for this playthrough, and if I didn't have it, I may not have beaten True Torment mode. The Path of Penance is never meant to be easily beaten, and by making the content New Game Plus only, you can truly see why this is the case. Despite my initial dislike of this, I came out of this experience much better off. I really enjoyed the requirement of having a second playthrough, and it also helps with the story itself. Watching a movie or playing a game twice can be helpful for the story as you're coming into the next playthrough with prior knowledge, so you can now focus on those smaller details. But not everyone wants to play a game twice. Blasphemous, however, locks the concept behind the second playthrough, forcing the player to play.
For such an early boss, Ten Piedad does have a very good design. Like, you could easily see this maybe even being a late game or final boss on another game, but they just don't pull any punches. Which in turn allows more people. Why? Why can I copy and paste? I don't even know what I had selected.
To understand the story. One of the lines that Escobar says comes up about 20 minutes into the game, and it's not until the last 2 minutes where you finally see him in that form. But playing again, you can recognize that Escobar was talking to us very early on in the game. To access this content, we'll need a new item called the Petrified Bell, which is given to us upon starting the next playthrough. This unlocks a new area and a new NPC called Hebrael. He, by the way of the miracle, was named the Messenger of the Seta. We aren't given much info on what the Seta is, sadly, but we do know that it seems to be some mysterious force that is able to unearth some of the secrets of the miracle. It's able to do this by playing a specific sound that Hebrael is familiar with, and it's actually really beautiful.
Do you want to make...
Not just this music, but a lot of the music in the game is really well done, especially in the above ground levels where it seems like some loot is being played and it's just really comforting. What this music unearths are coffins that hold the Amenacidas, the golden blades, the bejeweled arrow, the chiseled steel, and the molten thorn. I'll be honest, this DLC has 0 disappointing bosses, and I would argue that all of them are at the top of my favorites list as well. Just as they have similar names, they also have similar movesets, but they aren't completely copied and pasted. All of them provide a different level of challenge, and some players may find specific bosses harder than others. Each of them has this shield recharge that gives them a shield that needs to be destroyed first before you can attack them again, unless you interrupt them in the middle of it. There's also a mix of moves that can offer punishes, like the Chiseled Steel sort of doppelganger type move and the Bejeweled Arrow's power attacks, but there's also a handful of moves that you just have to deal with, like the Molten Thorn constantly teleporting. There is no way to punish this, you just have to deal with it and hope you don't miss. The decision to also lock these bosses behind Hibrael's questline also means you have to fight them on New Game Plus only, which obviously makes these bosses that much harder, but they felt designed for this game mode, and the movesets and damage output reflect this. I feel like the fights wouldn't have been as memorable if they were thrown into the main content. For most players, these will be the final few bosses that they have left to do for the game, so this makes the fights more memorable, and it also makes the final stage that much easier. The final boss of the DLC is called Laudez, the First of the Amenacidas. It's a full-on 4-phase fight. She can also not be stopped during her shield recharge, at least to my knowledge, because every time she changes, she goes into the next phase. But while 4 phases might seem scary, you're actually more comfortable than you might initially realize, as each phase is the same fight as the other 4 bosses. You're essentially fighting the same 4 bosses, but in one continuous fight. This is not only incredible from a gameplay perspective, but from a narrative one as well. During the unearthing of the Amenacidas, Hibrael would give us some background on what they were about. When the miracle first granted the wish of the boy who became known as the Twisted One, it clearly sparked a lot of discussion amongst the people of Custodia. One such person, Laudez, became devoted to him. By the power of the miracle, combined with her immense passion for the Twisted One, she was able to create 4 different bodies formed with liquid gold, which are the 4 Amenacidas we faced earlier. Laudez and her 4 reflections would guard the Twisted One and parade him around Custodia. But the miracle started growing resentful of this, because it had hoped that Laudez was showing her passion for the miracle through the Twisted One, since it had caused that event to occur, but Laudez was specifically devoted to the Twisted One itself. She cared about the being the miracle created, not the miracle itself. The miracle was annoyed upon discovering this and thus sealed them away in coffins, including Laudez, only capable of being unearthed when the music of the Seta was played across the land. This is a huge revelation for the game, because it shows that the miracle has clear signs of sentience. It has the ability to feel resentment and anger because of Laudez, which now makes things even more confusing. Up until this point, a plausible theory could have been that the miracle was just unhinged and just doing things to do them without a reason, but this was deliberate. It intentionally did this, but we're still stuck on the why, and that's been my issue all game. Despite how much fun I was having with this game and its DLC, I couldn't get this nagging feeling out of my head, that there was something more going on. What is the goal of a being who has the capacity to unleash a sickness upon people, curse people with eternal pain and suffering, but also be able to heal wounds with a kiss, and provide a being not only the means to revive constantly, but also be able to absolve people of their sins and allow them to die and pass on to the other side of the dream? I had one question that still couldn't be answered. If the main goal of the miracle was for us to replace Escobar, why cause the sickness in Albaro? Why condemn these people to terrible fates? Why force us to go through all of this? It's a question that I had been asking all game. And then I was given the answer. Wounds of Eventide is the final DLC of Blasphemous, and unlike Stir of Dawn, which has a plethora of gameplay content, Wounds of Eventide adds one thing: a new ending. An ending that is considered the canon ending of Blasphemous and was an answer to my final question. To start the DLC, we must meet Petrova. You'll meet her naturally through the main game when she ambushes you, but you have to find her at her grave. She tells us to meet with her brother Esdras. Esdras has been following us all game, and if we meet with his sister before fighting him, instead of killing him, we force him to surrender. Esdras then meets with us at the Chapel of the Kneeling Stone, the same place where the woman in the intro stabbed herself. Esdras then gives us a key to take to a man named Diosdado, who will unlock a hidden door within the library. In here is the secret item called the Crimson Heart of Miura. Alright, this isn't actually part of the story, but it was a nice reference. R.I.P. Miura. The actual secret is this being. Earlier in the video, I said that there were 3 Guardian Visages and 3 Holy Wounds. Well, there's actually 4. This is the 4th Guardian Visage who holds the Holy Wound of Abnegation, or at least he did. See, the 4th Visage was different than his other brethren. When he was transformed into the state by the miracle, he was able to see something his other brothers couldn't. He could see the real form of the miracle and where it resides. The miracle took notice of this and turned on the 4th Visage. His brothers also did as well, which led him to being deemed a traitor and a heretic. So even though he spoke the truth, no one was able to hear it. To get him to speak to us though, we need to find his 2 missing eyes that were taken and thrown away. One resides in the socket of Serapis, a giant serpent that most likely was just a snake that came in contact with the eye and turned into what we see now, and the other lies with Isadora, the singer of the dead. She was just a young woman who used to sing to those in her village until one day she sang to the long-lost beings of the Augury. But not only could they hear her, they sung back. She then stayed there for the rest of her life and now sings to the dead for eternity. I don't think there's any specific reason why these beings have these eyes in particular. It seems that the miracle just kind of wanted to throw them away in the farthest, darkest corners of Custodia so that no one could find them. After returning them to the 4th visage, he gives us the true heart of our sword, the heart that was supposed to be embedded in our sword, but it was taken, presumably by the miracle, before we could retrieve it. The 4th visage gives this to us and tells us to break the chain of the most fervent soul in Custodia, the one who has the most devotion to the miracle and its practices. That, of course, being Chrysanta. Chrysanta was devoted to Escobar and thus would have turned its back on the miracle during that time in history, but the miracle had its chains deep inside Chrysanta, and with this heart, we can cut those metaphorical chains off of her, cutting off the influence of the miracle over her. She was most likely manipulated by the miracle because of her power, as she holds the final wound, the holy wound of abnegation. Abnegation is defined as a rejection of something, meaning we're going to be rejecting the miracle. Chrysanta would have likely tried to stop the miracle because of the wound, but couldn't because the restraints were binding her. She gives us the wound and tells us to continue our pilgrimage, and by defeating Escobar, instead of being swallowed by the ash or making it to the throne, we actually go even higher as the throne moves up towards the sky, and eventually we awake inside the dream. The realm we have been hearing about all game has been discovered, but stopping us from getting any farther is Escobar, as his new duty is being the guardian of the dream. Killing Escobar is quite tough, but thankfully Chrysanta has found the strength to join us. With the two working together, they are easily able to defeat Escobar for good this time and can now uncover the truth.
Penitent one, who comes into our presence.
Bringing guilt to the most sacred of places, to the most forbidden of temples.
This being is known as the High Wills, and everything we have talked about leads back to them. Every time I've mentioned something regarding the miracle, it's actually been the High Wills. These beings are the cause of everything happening in Custodia. All the fates of the NPCs and bosses, the fate of the Twisted One, the Kneeling Woman, Escobar, everything was all because of them. The High Wills were a being who were spoken into existence. This was because of the people of Custodia. Unless I'm incorrect, given my ignorance on the subject, God is known as the creator within Christianity. He created us. This is the opposite. If we all collectively created a religion and belief system, we would need a figurehead for that, so we would all believe in some godlike figure being the entity of our belief system. This was the same for the people of Custodia, and due to their immense belief in a being they called the High Wills, it was actually able to exist, but only inside the dream.
So we were right. Assuming this person's right, they at least agree with me, where the people of Custodia in their religion created the High Wills, and using the power of their belief, the High Wills did the whole grievous miracle bullshit and fucked everybody up.
Dialogue from the High Will seems to imply that this dream that they reside in is older than they are. Furthermore, inside this dream is the Path of Ancient Processions, which also seems to be older than they are. So they aren't the creators of this realm, they just live here, meaning that they are more powerful entities at play here. Furthermore, we also learn why they did everything. The reason is because they live off of belief. Since a being was born of a belief, it can die of it. The more people that believe in the High Wills, the more eternal they become, and the stronger the devotion, the more powerful they become, and as they say, are able to reach higher than the sky itself. The High Wills created all the suffering in Custodia so that the people could pray to them more and thus give them more life force to be able to grow stronger and be immortal. That's why the High Wills say that they use the miracle to weave the threads of the people's dreams into the path of the ancient procession, which according to them is a domain where faith would reunite in one single uninterrupted act of adoration. They are a parasite that uses the devotion of the people of Custodia as a means to become immortal and gain more power. But here's where things are going to get murky. They seem to imply that the miracle was created by them and is thus a separate entity. It's my theory, though, that the miracle and the High Wills are two beings, but the question of whether or not they created the miracle is still unknown. Regardless of what actually happened, though, The High Will seem to be using the Miracle's power to cause all the problems in Custodia. So it's not the Miracle's doing, rather the High Will's using the Miracle. I believe that the High Wills revived the Penitent One with the power of the Miracle so that we could replace Escobar. It seems clear that the High Wills wanted the Penitent One to do the good ending, where we replace Escobar because it keeps their devotion going, not the true ending where we confront them, because once we do, the Penitent One and Crisanta destroy the High Wills. After this happens, the Penitent One meets with the Twisted One, who embraces him, most likely thanking him for what he did. Shortly after, though, the sword will crumble and the Penitent One dies. Since the High Wills used the Miracle to revive us, and now the High Wills are dead, its creations are gone, so the Mea Culpa and the Twisted One are officially gone, and the Penitent One also stays dead since he was revived by them in the first place. After the credits, though, we can see a heart in the sky and a being inside of it. This is left ambiguous because of the sequel set to release next year, but the question of what it is can still be put in play here. Some, including myself, believe that this is the manifestation of the Miracle. We're no longer just going to be seeing its acts anymore, but the real thing. However, there is a lot of holes in this theory. It's possible that the actual Miracle revived the Penitent One because it wanted us to kill the High Wills so that they could stop it from using its power for themselves. Furthermore, the time frame of the High Wills is spotty at best. It seems heavily implied that once the Twisted One turned into a tree, the people of Custodia began worshipping the Miracle, and that was according to Deo Gracias, the first Miracle. So they couldn't have worshipped an entity they didn't create or know existed, but if the High Wills created the Miracle, how could the people have spoken the High Wills into existence if they didn't believe in something called the High Wills? This has led to two theories, one of which being that the Miracle was not made by the High Wills and actually existed before the High Wills were even created, and the other being that an older generation of people worship the High Wills, but now this new generation worships the Miracle. This could explain why the words High Wills and Miracle are spoken interchangeably. The Lord of Salty Shore says the words High Wills and the Miracle interchangeably, so it's clear that it's two beings, but the question of what order and how they were created is still a mystery. To summarize this in a brief a way as possible, either the High Wills were born first and then the Miracle, or the Miracle came first and then the High Wills. Then there's also the question of whether or not the Miracle was created upon the High Wills' creation or later in the High Wills' lifespan, once again assuming the High Wills came first. As if you couldn't tell from the past 4 minutes, it's a fucking mess. But a sequel with the proper writing should be able to answer this question and give us an answer to what that being was at the end. But that, however, was the story of Blasphemous, a place ruled by an ancient being that used the people's devotion to continue living and increase its power. The High Wills then most likely revived the Penitent One with the goal of replacing Escobar and continuing their faith, but thanks to some divine intervention, whether it was the Miracle working separately against the High Wills, or the High Wills had just simply not anticipated this happening, the Penitent One had reached its realm and destroyed it, removing its influence from Custodia, presumably for good. What a fantastic piece of fiction. Blasphemous has a fantastic story, and its ability to incorporate its own lore with real imagery and references to real-life religion was expertly crafted, as it feels like it's a part of the world rather than just a cute Easter egg. Playing through this game was one of the best decisions I've ever made, and I urge you to give this a try for yourself, not just for the story, but for the gameplay too. It's a game I have zero complaints about, and has been one of the best stories I've seen in recent years. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, thank you. Blasphemous was a really fun game and a great introduction to the Metroidvania genre. There is another Metroidvania that I do want to cover in the near future, which we've talked about before on the channel,
say
and
Axiom
that is
Verge?
Hollow Knight. I don't know
No.
much about the game, but the little I do know interests me quite a lot, which is why I'm really excited to play it. It may take some time to make that video though, as Hollow Knight has a lot of content to get through. I'm hoping for it to be the next video after
Basically,
this, but I may
yeah.
have to work on it in the background while I do some other projects in the meantime. Don't worry though whether it'll be the next 2 weeks from now or a couple months from now, Hollow Knight will be talked about here on the channel. If that sounds interesting to you, or if you like the video, then of course like and subscribe if you're new, and as always, thank you to my returning viewers for coming back to another video. Take care everyone, and goodbye.
In this realm of dust and glimmering lights.
Okay. So that was a little bit of explanation of Blasphemous, and it's still kind of opaque, but some of the stuff was explained, like why Escobar is the way he is and all that stuff, and some of the lore of the bosses. Like, it's good. It's a good story. It's just kind of, I don't know what the word is for it. I think arcane is a good word for it, where it's like, it's a good story, it's interesting, it's worth your time, but it's very dense and hard to get to the true meaning of things. Oh well. Anyways, that's gonna be it for me tonight. Thank you for sitting with me throughout all this. I need to find someone to raid real quick. So let me get Twitch up here. Let's see who's live at 1:30 in the morning. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's left kind of ambiguous, although I do think that Blasphemous 2 is going to clear up a lot of that, which is fine. Hey yo, Moktaros is streaming. I am going to raid Mok. Mok is a good friend of the stream. So we're going to send you guys over to Moktaros. They're doing a Just Chatting stream, but they're good people. And I encourage you to at least say hi and give him my best. So, thanks for hanging out. I'm going to be back on Wednesday, likely with Grim Dawn, with Pixelated Owl, and maybe Sonophilos, aka Bones. We will have to see. If Grim Dawn doesn't happen, we will do something else. There will be something happening on Wednesday. But that's going to be my last stream for the week. I'm not doing any off-brand streams this week. So I'm sure you'll find something to occupy your time. But hey, thank you for hanging out with me tonight. Thank you for sitting with me through the end of Blasphemous. I'm glad it wasn't as painful as I was expecting. Have a good night, everybody. I will catch you on the flip side.